On this channel, I always strive to bring you guys nothing but positive energy, happy vibes, and just spread the joy of this medium and this art form that I love so much, that being video games. But I will say, this is the one video where I'm not going to be necessarily be negative, but I am going to be a little angry, okay? So, there will be positivity in this video. There will be a lot of positivity. I mean, in the thumbnail, you literally saw me holding up Elden Ring and Halo, and I mean, when it comes to talking about games like this, you have to be positive. And don't worry, you know, when I'm angry, I'm the type of guy where I still use a varied vocabulary. This isn't just gonna be some angry, bashful video full of a bunch of profanity or jaded boomer takes or biased takes. You know, it's still gonna be the... you know, when it comes to these videos, I like to think that they're usually somewhat intelligible or have a little bit of intellectuality to them, but, you know, I'm still gonna try to retain that, though I am gonna slip off the handle probably at least a couple of times, and there is gonna be a bit of light profanity and hot takes being thrown around from time to time, most likely. I'm gonna try to keep it in check, but just wanted to throw that out there before we get too far into the video. So, you guys read the title, and this video is me simply trying to combat all of the negative and toxic nonsense that I see online on a daily basis. The 9th generation is so disappointing. Modern gaming is a scam. Modern gaming sucks. Gaming is the worst it's ever been. There is many points that I'm going to bring up in this video, and just before we get into this, I just want to say I have taken no notes. There is no script. This is just my ADHD brain going crazy. If you're new to this channel, strap in, you're gonna need a seatbelt. But for those of you that have been watching the channel for a while, you know what to expect here. You know, we'll bring it all together in the end. We'll figure this thing out even if this video does get dragged out for a little while. That's just my style of content. I like to sit down and have a casual conversation for anywhere from like 20 minutes to an hour, so hope you guys are ready. So I guess the first thing that I want to address with video games nowadays is the fact that I despise video game discourse. I've talked about this before, but we're gonna go more in depth with this and just go all out with my feelings on this. I do not engage in video game discourse or conversations online. The only conversations that I interact with are in my own comment section whenever I make videos pertaining to, you know, like video game related topics, which is literally all the time because this channel is almost entirely gaming based. I've made a few offshoot videos talking about movies and music from time to time, but 99.9% of my videos are about, you know, video games and video game conversations. So the only conversations I engage with online are in my own comment section, really. I just cannot stand modern gamers nowadays on YouTube and X and Reddit, and the funny thing is, all these people that complain about modern gaming and how there's no games this generation, all the games suck, those are the people that spend all of their time working on these crappy YouTube videos, talking crap in the YouTube comment section, talking crap on X, talking crap on Reddit, and they spend all their time doing that rather than actually playing video games. The people that sit there pointing their fingers like, oh man, Concord sucks, oh man, look at this, here's another disastrous buggy launch for this one game. They're the same ones that haven't even played some of the best games coming out this year. And before, you know what, so what we're gonna do real quick is we're gonna pull up Metacritic, and I despise Metacritic, and that is another thing that we're gonna get to later in this video. But since everybody loves to talk about, oh, this game isn't a 90 on Metacritic, therefore it sucks, let's just go ahead and pull up Metacritic for, you know, 2024, and we'll just go ahead and go through this. So every time that somebody tries to say that there's no good games coming out, there's no games this generation, again, this is just 2024. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, a 94 on Metacritic. Is it an expansion? Technically, yes, but I mean, it's big enough to be its own game. Astrobot, 94. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, 92. UFO 50, 91. Animal Well, 91. Satisfactory, 90. Balatro, 90. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, 90. Thank Goodness You're Here, 90. Tekken 8, 90. Destiny 2 The Final Shape, an expansion, yes, but still an 89. Horizon Forbidden West, 89. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, 89. Castlevania, 89. Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit, Five Nights at Freddy's making a huge comeback, 87. And mind you, this isn't even me going through like every single game. I'm literally been skipping around. And since everybody loves to talk about their lovely Metacritic scores, let's go back to 2008. A year we can all agree was like, yeah, one of the best years for video games. People talk about nowadays, they're like, oh man, half the games coming out are remakes, and you know, I left some of those out, right? Because actually if I go back to 2024, you know, there was a lot of remakes or re-releases in there, like Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, and then like Persona 3 Reload. Those were up in in the top echelon there, but let's go back to 2008, shall we? Remember how many high 90s, high 80s I just listed off? Alright, here, but before we even leave the top 10, really here in 2008, we're already kind of slipping out of the 90 territory. So we had GTA 4, 98, Little Big Planet, 95, Metal Gear Solid 4, 94, Super Smash Bros. 4, 93, we had Braid at 93, Fallout 3, 93, I'm not even gonna keep saying the 90s, just assume that it's 90 plus if I'm saying the name. Gears of War 2, Galactic, and then, oh, look at this, Chrono Trigger at number 9. A remake of Chrono Trigger from the SNES, and it's, you know, it's in the top 10. Oh, what's this? Super Street Fighter 2? A remake of a SNES game sitting here in the top 20? Oh, that's interesting. It's almost like remakes have always been a thing. Oh, and what's this? Super Mario All-Stars, a game from the 90s? A remake of the NES Mario games, and yet it's regarded as one of the best remakes of all time? Yet it didn't really change anything? Yet everybody loved it then? So if you're wondering what point I'm trying to prove right here, there's two things I'm actually trying to prove with this. One, remakes and remasters, not only have they always been a thing, because people nowadays are like, oh, there's so many remakes and remasters, there's too many, where's the original games? Dog, we have always been getting drowned in remakes and remasters. This has been happening since the 90s during the Super Nintendo era. We were getting HD re-releases as soon as like the PS3 and the 360. It happened throughout the entirety of the PS4 and Xbox One generation, and it's still happening to this day, of course, and yet only now are people really complaining about it. Why? Because again, this is the toxic modern age where everybody complains about everything on Reddit and X when they had no intentions of purchasing the product in the first place. These people don't understand that these games are created for people that either A, want to revisit the game because they love the game, or B, they were made for people that simply haven't had the chance or had the platforms to play the games before, and now it's making it accessible to a new or more modern audience. So when everybody sits there like, oh man, why is The Last of Us Part 1 getting a remake? Dog, the game is 10 years old at this, 11 years old at this point. As much as I love The Last of Us, and I don't think that the game ever necessarily needed a remake in terms of just how well the game holds up, I mean, the game is still 11 years old. Do you know how many new gamers have been born since then? In gaming terms, that's like an entirely new generation, and there's some kids that either A, don't have a PS3, have never seen a PS3, or don't have a way to officially get a PS3 besides the secondhand market, which that's pretty dodgy. So by official means, yeah, something like The Last of Us Part 1. Do you know how many millions of gamers that game introduced, you know, those gamers to the series? Remakes and remasters have always been a thing, and if you go back to the Xbox One and PS4 generation, like even like 5-10 years ago, we were actually getting more of them then than we are now. So again, I don't know why people are just choosing to complain about it now, but anyways, the second point I was proving with the Metacritic thing is people always swear by Metacritic, right? They're like, oh man, the games coming out even like 10-15 years ago were so much better. Dog, I got through like the top 20 and we were still sitting in 90s plus. You go back to a year as great as 2008, you get through the top 12 and you're already sinking down to like below 90. It's like, who cares? It's a number on a screen. But hey, if people want to swear by Metacritic so much, then there you go. There's your proof that gaming, I mean, just off of Metacritic scores alone, is just as good as it ever has been. Furthermore, I just always thought it was hilarious how people are always like, oh man, video game journalists are so bad. Their reviews are so invalid. IGN, they literally said Pokemon had too much water. What clowns? Video game journalists suck, right guys? Do you people realize what Metacritic is? It is a collection of a bunch of video game journalists and no-lifes reviewing games and giving an arbitrary number based on what they think upon said game, and again, this is just like an amalgamation of all those random numbers that literally mean nothing combined into one. That is all a Metacritic score is, and again, this is an amalgamation and collection of numbers from people that the gaming industry as a whole has always laughed at and clowned on, saying that they suck and their opinions are invalid, yet when it comes to Metacritic and it's a collection of all of their numbers, for some reason now it's valid. Like, and not to mention the fact that it's an arbitrary number on a screen. Like, dog, this is like trying to describe a painting, but only describing it based on a number. Like, when you're trying to talk about the intricacies of, like, the Mona Lisa, how it was painted, the color palettes, this, that, and the other, what kind of, like, brushes and paints were used, it's like trying to describe the entire painting by just saying, oh, you know, 9 out of 10. Like, that tells you nothing about the game. It's just an arbitrary number coming from an arbitrary person's opinion. It is a number, and furthermore, numbers are so subjective. People always point at Metacritic and they're like, oh man, this game must be objectively terrible because it's not 100 out of 100 on Metacritic, and yet again, the number is just a collective of a bunch of opinions. And that's the next point that I want to get to. What happened when us as human beings had our own opinions, our own subjective, unique opinions? Because nowadays, one person says one thing, Metacritic says one thing, next thing, everybody on YouTube, everybody on X, everybody on Reddit, even people that have never played the games before or have even watched a trailer of it are now suddenly sharing the same opinion. Like, oh, for example, Concord sucks. Say what you will about Concord, me too. I'm also kind of sick of live service games. I don't even play live service games. That being said, a bunch of people were dunking on the game that had never even played on it before. How are you gonna dunk on a game that you have never even played? That's like saying you hate Big Macs even though you haven't even, like, you've seen one maybe in a commercial, but you've never tasted it. How can you say you hate the taste of it if you've never taken a bite of one? And furthermore, I am so sick of people saying, oh, this game is just good or it's bad. It's just like one other thing, and they think that their subjective opinion equals objective ground, like in any way. Like, no, that is not how it works. Like, the way I see it, video games are an art form. They deserve to be respected as the art form that they are. Sometimes a game is developed by one person, sometimes it's a few dozen, other times it's hundreds, if not thousands of people that create these games. And for people to just look at a simple number online or just to kind of watch a trailer or maybe play for like 5 or 10 minutes and then go, oh, this game's bad, and then just write it off. And that's just that. It's like, what are you even talking about? Like, again, it's an art form. It's like food. You can't just like take a bite of food and be like, oh man, this is just absolutely disgusting. It's the worst thing in the world, and act as if that has any objective ground. Because while yes, you're entitled to your opinion to say, to me, this tastes disgusting. But again, that's the thing with the internet nowadays. There's no such thing as opinions. Everything is an opinion turned into an objective fact. So if somebody says, oh, this game is bad, really what they're saying is, oh, this game isn't necessarily for me. But with the way that the internet works and the way that everybody internalizes everything, and with the way that this, again, the internet is just this disgusting echo chamber full of no-lifes that don't even play video games anyway, and instead they spend more of their time complaining online about how there's no games or how there's no good games, but, you know, they're not even playing any of the games that are releasing, so they have, first, no personal experience to actually form those opinions, but second, again, it seems like they don't even know those games exist because they're just spending all their time complaining online anyway. But yeah, when somebody points at a game, like I remember there was a bunch of controversy of people pointing at Elden Ring being like, oh man, this game's so bad for one reason or another. No, what those people meant to say was, oh, this game isn't necessarily for me, but you know, who knows, maybe it's maybe it's for somebody else. And of course, because this game ended up winning Game of the Year, but then that also goes vice versa, where sometimes some people get so toxic about their positivity where they're like, oh man, Elden Ring deserves Game of the Year, and if you disagree and if you think it's a bad game, well then you deserve to be like run over by a Mack truck. Like, no, dog, it doesn't work that way either. Everybody can have their own opinions. If you don't like a game, that's fine. It's not for you, whatever. I've said it before, I don't really like competitive live servicey MOBAs. Whether it be MOBA games or like hero shooters and such, it's not necessarily what I gravitate towards, especially when they have live servicey elements. I will play them and I will have fun with them, but it's just not something I'm going to be playing consistently. Like Overwatch, yeah, you know, I played Overwatch 2 in a drop, but that was kind of enough for me. I'm just not much of a competitive PvP guy, if that makes sense. But for somebody else, man, that's their bread and butter. They live on Overwatch 2. And for them, I am so happy. I am glad they enjoy the game. The game is a lot of fun. It's just not, you know, I'm just not all about the competitive mindset nowadays. I'm more, you know, I tend to play single-player games more than anything else. And if I do play PvP, it's something more casual, not as high stakes, like something like Call of Duty or Halo. But again, that's how the internet works nowadays. Everybody internalizes everything, and as soon as they read something, they think, oh, that it's on the internet, it must be an objective fact. And then they just, you know, they spread all this toxic garbage, and it's at this point where fact and opinion, there is no delineation between the two of them. Opinions are facts, and facts are sometimes misconstrued to be opinions. And again, going back to the Metacritic thing, dog, this is a collection of numbers from people that gamers for the longest time have always resented and said that their opinions are invalid. Why are they valid just because they're put up on this pedestal of Metacritic? Metacritic, like, it's, what are we even talking about? And furthermore, it is a number on a screen. Going back to the Mona Lisa example, you can't describe the Mona Lisa with a number. There is so much complexity that goes into what those numbers even mean to those individual game reviewers in the first place. And furthermore, the numbers shouldn't matter. Why should a number on a screen contradict whether you do or don't play a game, whether you do or don't enjoy a game, whether you do or don't talk about it positively, especially if you haven't played it before? What happened to the days when people would just buy a game, play it, and have fun? I feel like people have forgotten that video games are supposed to be fun. I'm so sick of everybody on the internet finding a way to be so hateful or neglectful or negative or pessimistic or critical of video games. I'm so sick of hearing all the negativity about modern gaming, or even the people that are now, like, you know, whether it be the newer generation or people just reflecting, going back and dunking on older games, being like, oh man, this is aged like milk, this doesn't hold up. What do you mean it doesn't hold up, dog? Like, what? It doesn't hold up to your artificial standards of what a modern game should be? I thought you just got done complaining about what modern games should be. Now you're going back and dunking on that? That's what I'm saying. Like, everybody just finds a way to be negative, because that's the internet nowadays. It's hate baiting, it's clickbaiting, it's rage baiting. There's no passion, there's no love. It's all negativity. Who can get the most views, who can get the most clicks, and I think that's part of what frustrates me the most about all of this, is that half the time when people are talking about this stuff, first things first, going back to what I said before, most people are spending more time complaining online than they actually are playing video games. Therefore, they don't even know that great games actually are out right now, because they just read a headline on IGN or Twitter or whatever saying something about one game, and then they just get into this again, this echo chamber mindset of just wanting to be negative just because, I don't know, they have no lives, no time, and are just desperate for clicks. Honestly, I'm at that point where we're only like part way through the video and I just want to stop. I want to cut this conversation off so bad. I hate even talking about this stuff because it just melts my mind, brother. It just makes me so sad and so, like, kind of mad to an extent, because it's like, man, I love this medium so much. I have loved video games since I was a child, and, you know, like, half the people doing this stuff, I'm sure somewhere in their heart they have love for it, but it's so sickening seeing an art form that I am so passionate about just be contorted into this disgusting atrocity online. Like, I have nothing, like, obviously, I love video games, right? Like, I absolutely adore video games. I have nothing against video games. What I have something against is the video game discourse and conversation online nowadays. What I have something against is video game journalism and the way that all of that stuff, literally, I'm gonna cut myself off. I love video games. I just hate everything that happens on the internet centered around video games basically nowadays. That's why I disconnected from all of it. The only video game news I pay attention to is when new games have been announced, when new consoles have been announced. Maybe, you know, I'll see the occasional headline of like, oh, layoffs hit this studio, you know, like, that's sad. You know, I like staying in the loop about some of my favorite development teams and publishing teams and stuff like that, you know, so I'll stay in the loop with stuff like that, but oh man, that gets into a whole other rabbit hole of like the whole leaks and rumors thing. Man, leaks and rumors, that's another thing where those are like terrible for the industry. Less so rumors, because those are just, I mean, anybody can come up with that, but rather like the leak side of things. I am so sick of, dude, if I go on my YouTube recommended one more time and I see, ooh, Switch 2 leaked, PS5 Pro, this, that, the other leaked. Stop. But that goes back to what I said before. It's all just about clicks nowadays. There's no passion. And it makes me sick, because video games are an art form all about passion. The people creating the video games, they're full of passion. That's the reason we had the video game in the first place. Like, when you look at a game like Elden Ring, this was made with nothing but pure passion from the hundreds, if not thousands of people that worked on this game. And you want to know what this game is worth to most people online? Whatever the hell its Metacritic score is. Do you know what this is like? That this would be like going to a restaurant, and then your waiter comes back. How's your food? It's a 64 out of 100 on Metacritic. Like, what? Hey, brother, what'd you think about them spicy chicken wings we got from Burger King? You like them? It's a 72 out of 100. Huh? Your girlfriend comes up to you. Baby, do you love me? 43 out of 100 on Metacritic. TLDW for this section of the video, because I really don't want to get this part wrapped up. I feel like I'm getting to that point where my brain is just getting fried. The TLDR, I hate all this stuff. I hate online discourse about video games. I hate it. I miss when there was pure passion. That's all I want. That's all I want back. I just want pure passion to return. If you make a video reviewing a game, but hey, just so happens the game wasn't for you, but you still give at least constructive criticism, or at least make it clear that it's just your subjective opinion and you're just talking about like one thing or another, that's one thing. But there's a clear delineation between that and the people that act as if their opinion is pure God-sent facts online. It's just, my brain actually hurts. I hate the internet. I really do. I just hate the internet, man. Obviously, I have like an X, Reddit, and YouTube account, but I don't use X. I don't use Reddit. I only use X to like promote my videos, to be like, hey, I posted a new video if you guys want to go watch it. Reddit, I really never use unless I have a very specific like technology question, in which case most people have probably already like made posts about it and have responses to that before. I never make like Reddit posts my own. I just go through and read others. And YouTube, I mean, I don't really even watch YouTube nowadays. It's too much. But yeah, that was the other point I wanted to get to as well. Like, there is obviously just as many amazing games coming out. Like, when you look at, like, the late 2000s, early 2010s, you had a bunch of great games coming out, like, you know, like Assassin's Creed 2, Far Cry 3. You got the obvious ones like BioShock. Some of the more underrated ones that were still fantastic games, like Dead Island. You had all the fantastic Battlefield games, all the Call of Duty games, amazing indie games that went on to become some of the best-selling games of all time, like Terraria and Minecraft. And then you had GTA 5 towards the beginning of the early 2010s, which is Obviously, you know, say what you will about how many times they re-released it, one of the best games of all time, Skyrim, and, you know, people pointed that, be like, oh man, that's one of the golden ages of gaming, right? Because there's, like, multiple golden ages you could point to. You have that generation, then you also have, like, the PS1 generation with games like Gran Turismo 1 and 2, Final Fantasy 7, and then you add, you know, you go back a little bit farther to, like, the SNES era with the games like Chrono Trigger and the Final Fantasy games, Super Mario World, and Donkey Kong Country. Go back even farther to, like, the NES, then you have, like, Super Mario Bros, and then if you want to go ahead a little bit more, going back to the SNES area, obviously, then we had, like, the Sega Genesis era with, like, you know, Sonic and Streets of Rage and all that. So there's many different golden ages that you can point to, obviously, and people always have a fondness for our past. That's just how we are as human beings. Even I'm like that, you know. Obviously, I have a ton of nostalgia, especially for, like, the PS2 and GameCube era, because that's the one that I grew up during. That being said, that's also another widespread issue where sometimes a lot of people let their biases or love for the past get in the way and blind them from just how great things still are. And getting back on track with the point I was trying to make right there is that, yes, we had a bunch of those great games coming out, but look in the past year even. I mean, between 2024 and 2023, we had amazing games like Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, Stellar Blade, Helldivers 2, Pal World. And that's what I'm trying to say. You still have those amazing indie games like back in the day. Again, Terraria, Minecraft. Nowadays, that would be like the Pal Worlds that you're getting, you know what I mean? Spider-Man 2, Astrobot, Resident Evil 4 Remake, which goes back to what I was saying before, how remakes have been here since the 90s, man. Super Mario All-Stars, regarded as one of the best games and best remakes of all time. Nobody dunks on that one, but then when remakes and remasters are made nowadays, now people are like kind of dunking on that. Like, what? Like, oh, well, what's changed? And if you're not convinced for some reason, which if you're not convinced, then that just tells me that you're one of the people that sits on X and Reddit all day, in which case, more power to you. Go do your thing. But, I mean, again, there's still just as many great games coming out as there ever has been. But the most important point that I want to drive home with any of this is that gaming, and I know I just made a whole thing talking about, you know, subjective versus objective, fact versus opinion, but objectively speaking, and you will never hear me saying this, well, I've said it a few times before, but this is just truly an objective fact. Like, it is an objective fact, it is a fact of life, there is no opinion in this. Gaming is the best it has ever been, and it ever will be. Tomorrow, it will be better. The day after that, it will be even better. The day after that, it will be even better, and 500 years from now, it will be 500 times better than what it is today. Well, actually, no, that would be 365 times 500, so, okay, it'll be a lot times more better than it is even today. You want to know why? Not only is there new games coming out on the, you know, whether it be physical games, re-releases of games, or indie games on your various storefronts, not only will those be coming out every single day, but all of the games we grew up with, all of the games that have been around since the beginning of time, they will always be here. And that is why gaming is objectively the best that it has ever been. Because, sure, maybe a game like Elden Ring, which is one of the best games ever made, isn't necessarily for you in your subjective opinion or doesn't match your tastes or whatever for any reason. And sure, there may even be a case of like, hey, maybe some of the games coming out, maybe it just seems like there's not as many games coming out because maybe more of them aren't to your taste, but even then I would honestly have to point at you and just say, hey buddy, that's your fault, because whether we're talking about the AA space, the AAA space, or the indie space, there's like thousands. I mean, I don't even know how many games release per week, but I mean, there's a lot of games releasing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and if not even one of them or like a couple dozen of them is up to your standards, I'm sorry, you might just have to take a look in the mirror. And furthermore, like, it's one of those things where, like, it shouldn't matter how many games are coming out anyway, because let's be real, no matter how many games are coming out, do you really even have time to play through all the games and keep up with them as they're releasing, or have enough money to do that? But again, as I had said before, like, I mean, going back to the past, once again, gaming is objectively the best it ever will be today, tomorrow, and years to come, because all of these games will always exist. What's that? You're not necessarily jiving with the new Final Fantasy? That's okay. Go pop in Final Fantasy 3, which is technically Final Fantasy 6, on your Super Nintendo, and relive some nostalgia, or in most cases, you know, do you know how many video games exist? Because I don't, but I know there's a lot of them, probably hundreds of thousands. You know what? Let's Google search this and find out together. Okay, so there's no specific number because there's been so many video games released, but the estimate is somewhere over 5 million games in existence, maybe more, maybe less. Again, there's no definitive answer, but that's just the estimate. You can't tell me that you have completely cleared out your backlog of even, like, even if your backlog is only 1%, maybe even 0.5% of those 5 million games, or like even just games that you would like to try or that would interest you, like there's no way you've beaten all those games. Like me, for example, I've played a lot of games. I have played thousands of games in the 2+ decades that I've been alive. But guess what? I still have a backlog. Even for a guy like me, there's still games that I want to get to from decades ago during like the Super Nintendo era, for example. So if something releasing right now in this moment isn't necessarily for you, you can always go back to the past and experience something that is for you. But at the same time, if nothing releasing today seems to be for you, again, I think you might just need to look in the mirror, because with how many different genres are being released by so many different companies and publishers all the time, that really is just a you thing. I'm sorry, you gotta figure that one out. Look in the mirror, open that. Like, that's another conversation point that I kind of wanted to touch on, is that people are so linear minded. Like, people are so close minded when it comes to what kind of games they'll play. They're like, oh, I'm an FPS guy and that's all I'll play. I'm a Warzone guy, that's all I'm gonna play. And then they post these videos like, oh, I'm so burnt out on game. Oh my god, dude, I cannot stand those videos. The people like, I'm burnt out on gaming. Dog, video games are supposed to be a fun hobby. What are you doing getting burnt out on video games? That's like saying you're getting burnt out on pizza. Brother in Christ, what are you doing wrong? Like, what? That is probably the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and yet I've been hearing about it more and more online. If that's happening to you, I'm sorry, but getting burnt out on video games as a whole is just impossible. I'm sorry, it really is. With how many different genres of video games there are, that some video games aren't even video games. You go play like a Telltale game or like one of those games like Detroit Become Human, for example. It's basically just like watching a movie. What, are you burnt out on movies too? I mean, you could go play a visual novel, that's like reading a book. What, are you burnt out on books too? You got puzzle games? Don't tell me you're burnt out on puzzles. I mean, like, what? What people mean to say is that they're sick of bottom fragging in Call of Duty. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not burnt out on gaming, bro. You just suck at your game right now. You had a couple bad matches. Shut up, wipe your tears, and go play something new. There's a difference between burnout and just being like, oh man, I just put 1,000 hours into Warzone over the last month. Yeah, you know, maybe it wouldn't hurt to go play something else. Go fire up a match of, like, F-Zero on the SNES, or maybe go play, like, Doki Doki Literature Club or something. Go play something. Go play Fortnite, for crying out loud. Just, it's like, come on, dog. Like, yeah, you know I just said that example about the pizza, but I mean, it is kind of relevant. Like, yeah, if you eat pepperoni pizza for every single meal for a month straight, of course you're gonna be like, alright, I kind of want to switch it up. Maybe throw some, like, I don't know, supreme toppings on this thing. You know what I mean? Just, if that's really where you're at, you know, again, that's just what happens when you play the same game day after day, put 1,000 hours into it in a month. It's like, yeah, dude, 1 month of Warzone straight, 1,000+ hours. Yeah, you know, it's like similar to the pizza thing. Maybe it's time you go switch it up and get stomped by Tree Sentinel for a bit. Know what I mean? But yeah, if there's any takeaways from this video, because at this point my brain is just fried, and I'm actually getting tired of listening to my own voice. Like, I'm actually just getting to that point where my brain feels like a jumbled mess, and I'm just actually getting aggravated even having to talk anymore. Yeah, just remember that objectively speaking, gaming is the best that it's ever been, and you know, like, there's two ways to look at it. One, the games that have released in the past will always be there. Some of that stance, yeah, it's obviously objectively the best, and you can literally cannot argue with that. And if you try to argue with that, I'm sorry, but you're in the wrong before you even open your mouth. But second off, I mean, with how many games are actually releasing on a consistent basis, on a daily basis, between AAA, AA, indie publishers across so many different genres, like, the people saying that stuff, like, they don't even know of a mere fraction of the games that are even out there. So, again, it's just, I think it really does just go back to what I said before about everybody just likes to be critical, negative, rage bait, and clickbait for views, and that's just where the internet's at, and that's why I just don't engage with any of this stuff. So, I know this video was a little long-winded, I know it was a little ranty, tangenty, rambly, but that's just kind of how I do things. That's just kind of how my ADHD brain copes, you know what I mean? I just like to ramble, go all over the place until I address all the points that I need to cover. I know this video was rather angry, negative, I don't know. I don't want to think of it as being necessarily negative. And if you've seen me, like, messing with something on the side, I was messing with a Rubik's Cube. Whenever I get, not necessarily stressed out, but whenever I'm in a situation that kind of stresses me out, or I'm in a situation where, like, my brain's trying to, you know, just figure out what it's trying to say, sometimes fidgeting with things helps, so I'm sorry if my eye contact is kind of waning off towards the end. Again, it's just an ADHD thing, I apologize. But anyways, yeah, I don't want to think of this video as necessarily being angry. There's just, you know, I guess a lot of passion and love there. Well, no, there is a lot of passion and love there, because I love video games. Video games are everything to me. Apologies again if you're hearing this for the 542nd time, but the first vivid memory from my life is playing Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo real late at night when I was 3 years old, sitting in front of a, you know, CRT TV, playing as Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, running through the temple, jumping on the snakes, rolling the tires. And growing up, man, you know, I don't want to get too deep into it, but I had a pretty rough childhood. You know, I know that's like the most cliche thing to say, like, oh man, dude had a rough childhood, whatever. But no, I did, man. You know, I don't want to get too real here, but my parents were addicts. I was physically abused. I'd get my face bashed in, dude. I get tossed down the stairs. I got held by my neck until my vision was blacking out and I'd almost pass out. Had pillows held over my face. Like, Yeah, dude, I'm traumatized. I have PTSD and I have a bunch of other conditions that are probably linked to that in some way or were exaggerated by that, you know, whether that be my OCD, my ADHD, my depression, my, you know, severe anxiety disorders, or like I said before with my PTSD and God knows like only what else I might have. Not to mention my parents always screaming and fighting and breaking stuff and glass getting shattered, doors getting slammed, windows getting broken, crazy exes breaking into the house and smashing stuff. Like, I honestly had an insane childhood, and the only way that I truly believe that I survived that in my teenage years was video games, man. When I was a kid playing on my PS2, whether I was playing games like Spider-Man 2, Battle for Bikini Bottom, or Lego Batman, or even through my teenage years then with like my Xbox 360 and my Xbox One and stuff like that, you know, playing with my friends on like Black Ops 2, and then later on when Black Ops 3 came out, and binging through those games or binging single player games just when I didn't want to be around anybody, whether that be like RPGs like Final Fantasy games, or binging through the Resident Evil games, or just whatever it is, man. And even to this day as an adult in my 20s, you know, whenever life is too hard or just feels like it's getting to be a bit much, or just whenever I want to escape, or just whenever I have free time, you know what I mean? Video games are always there. It doesn't matter if I'm happy, sad, angry, or just looking for a way to escape reality and feel normal, feel happy, just escape from everything and just be where I truly want to be. You know, I spend as much time as I can in the physical world trying to escape to the digital world, and that digital world obviously being video games, because I love video games so much. They're everything to me. And to see them be treated and talked about in the way that they are nowadays, and just with the discourse online, that's just, again, why I don't go on the internet anymore. Because if I would go on the internet, the only thing I'd want to read about or talk about is video games, but I mean, that whole conversation just kind of been ruined online nowadays. And the only way that I really feel like the only way that I can really do that while still retaining the passion and love that I have for video games, or at least keeping that aura or atmosphere in the conversation, is by creating videos like this with, and hopefully attracting some like-minded people that love video games as much as I do, or at least on a relative level, and then being able to talk in these videos and then hopefully connect with you guys in the comments and stuff, and, you know, just still spread that love, because otherwise, I mean, it's just a toxic waste field out there, man, and it really makes me sad, because I can't even engage with stuff online like I used to, you know? Like, if I do watch YouTube nowadays, it's usually just going back and rewatching old gaming videos that I used to like watching, like back in the early 2010s or late 2000s, you know what I mean? Like, there's barely any new creators coming out that I can even stand anymore. So most of the YouTube videos I watch are, again, like easily like 10 plus years old, just, you know, rewatching videos I used to watch as if I'm watching like my favorite shows or movies from my childhood almost. That's just kind of what it's like, you know? Otherwise, the only other stuff I watch nowadays is anime, and then, you know, when I'm not watching something, I'm just, you know, playing video games and just living my life, being happy, because, I mean, I love video games. They make me happy. They're like, it's like, out of any, I love a lot of things in this world, but video games are like that core thing, you know what I mean? Again, I love a lot of things. I love manga, anime, comic books, Legos, all this, that, and the other, but out of anything in my life, even above food or oxygen or water, video games are just everything to me. But I've sucked up enough of your time. Thank you for listening to my rant, tangent, and eventual calm down here towards the end. I hope you enjoyed this somehow. But anyway, as always, a massive shout out to all the patrons and channel members. Thank you all, even the low baller tier, and a big shout out to all the big baller tier, Molasking, Epic Daddy Mania, and the channel on D tier, Run Venture, and Cheese Girl. Thank you guys so much. You guys are literal legends. I love you. Have an amazing day. Stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.